February 26, 1991. Highway 80, Iraq. Last day of Gulf War. Darkness wrapped the desert in thermal green haze. Through the scope of his M40A5, Marcus Brennan could see them clearly. Convoy crawling south toward Kuwait border, headlights off but engines glowing hot in infrared. 23 vehicles, civilian trucks, sedans, one school bus with Arabic script peeling off the side. Radio crackle in his ear. Overwatch, this is Ghost One. I count multiple non-combatants. Women, children visible in windows. Abort. Repeat. Abort strike. Static. Then a voice he would never forget. Clipped and certain. Negative Ghost One. Intel confirms military transport. Target is weapons cache evacuation. Orders stand. Light them up. Marcus pressed the transmit button, hands slick with sweat despite the cold. Overwatch. I am eyes on target. These are families fleeing. Ghost One, you are not command authority. Fire for effect. That is a direct order. The Belgian Malinois beside him, Rex, 4 years old, nose twitching at scent of diesel and fear carried on wind, let out a low whine. The dog had been trained to detect explosives, enemy combatants, danger in 100 forms. Now Rex stared at Marcus with brown eyes that seemed to ask a question neither of them could answer. Marcus exhaled, pulled the trigger. The first Hellfire missile streaked overhead 3 seconds later, contrail bright against black sky. Then another. Then the sky became fire. Screams tore through the radio frequency before someone cut the channel. Rex bolted toward the highway, toward the flames, barking in a pitch Marcus had never heard. Not aggression, not alert, but something closer to anguish. Marcus tackled the dog, held him down, felt Rex's heart hammering against his ribs like it might burst through fur and bone. Through the scope, Marcus watched a woman stumble from burning wreckage, child in her arms, both on fire. He closed his eyes, didn't open them again until the screaming stopped. 33 years later, Marcus Brennan woke at 4:17 a.m., same as every morning, drenched in sweat that had nothing to do with Oregon's autumn chill. The cabin ceiling showed familiar cracks, one shaped like the Euphrates River, another like a femur he'd once set in a field hospital outside Basra. He stared at them until his breathing slowed, until the phantom smell of burning diesel faded enough that he could sit up without vomiting. 61 years old, alone, alive when better men were not. He swung legs over the side of the cot, not a bed, never a bed. Beds were for people who deserved rest, and began the morning routine that had kept him breathing since 1991. 50 push-ups, form degrading after 35, but he finished anyway. 20 pull-ups on the bar welded into the door frame, shoulders screaming protests he ignored. Then the walk. Outside, dawn hadn't touched the Cascade Mountains yet. His property, 12 acres of pine and silence purchased with the last of his military pension and money he'd saved by having no one to spend it on, pressed close in the dark. Marcus walked the perimeter by muscle memory, boots crunching frost-stiff needles, checking fence line and tree line for threats that never came but might. 32 minutes, same route, same vigilance. The workshop light clicked on at 5:47 a.m. Inside, half-finished coffins lined the walls in various stages of completion. Custom work, mostly. Families wanted specific wood, specific dimensions, specific everything when putting loved ones in the ground. Marcus gave them what they wanted, measured twice, cut once, sanded until his hands bled through the calluses. The irony wasn't lost on him building boxes for the dead when he'd created so many corpses himself, but irony didn't pay property tax. Coffee at 6:15, black, sitting on the porch while fog rolled through the pines like something searching. No radio, no TV, no noise except wind and distant crow calls and the steady drip of condensation from the eaves. The photograph on the mantel inside caught morning light at 6:47, same as always. Jake Brennan, 18 years old, army dress uniform, smile that belonged to someone who believed wars were won by good men doing hard things. KIA, Helmand Province, Afghanistan, August 2019. Bronze Star posthumous. Body shipped home in a coffin Marcus hadn't built because his hands shook too badly to hold a saw for 3 months after the notification officers left. Marcus looked at the photo exactly once per day, same time every morning for exactly 30 seconds. Not penance. Penance implied hope for forgiveness. Just accounting. tally of what he'd broken. The phone rang at 9:23 a.m. landline because Marcus didn't trust anything that couldn't be unplugged. He almost didn't answer. 12 rings, 13, 14. He picked up on 15. Cold professional voice, female. Is this Chief Petty Officer Marcus Brennan, retired? Yes, sir. This is Oregon State Police, Animal Control Division. We've recovered a military working dog with ID tattoo, November Gulf War 001. Navy service record shows you as last registered handler. We need you to come identify the animal. Marcus's vision tunneled. The coffee mug in his other hand hit the floor. Ceramic explosion he barely heard. That's impossible. That dog died in 1991. Sir, the animal is alive. Elderly but stable. We need positive identification within 48 hours or the dog will be transferred to federal custody. Where? Cascade County Animal Control, Highway 22. We're open until... I'll be there in 2 hours. Marcus hung up before she could respond. Stood perfectly still in the spreading pool of coffee, watching its seat between floorboards worn smooth by 3 decades of pacing. Rex. The name felt like swallowing broken glass. The drive to Cascade County Animal Control took 97 minutes. Would have taken 60 if Marcus's hands had been steady enough to hold the wheel above 45. The Chevy K5 Blazer, 1987, bought used in 1989, kept running through sheer stubbornness and refusal to let anything else die on his watch. Coughed blue smoke at every stoplight. Radio stayed off. Windows stayed down despite the cold because he needed air, needed something to cut through the memories clawing up his throat. Highway 22 unwound through timber country, clear cuts like shrapnel wounds in the forest, replanted sections too neat and orderly to be natural. Marcus had learned to hate order. Order meant someone had imposed control, and control meant someone had decided what lived and what burned. The animal control facility squatted beside a gravel lot, cinder block painted institutional beige, chain link runs extending out back where dogs barked in overlapping rhythms that reminded Marcus of mortar fire. Random, relentless, meaningless. He parked in the far corner, killed the engine, sat. Breathe, count, breathe. 5 minutes passed before he could make his legs work. Inside smelled like disinfectant and wet dog in desperation. Behind the counter, a woman in her 60s wearing reading glasses on a beaded chain looked up from paperwork. Name tag read Dr. Patricia Morrison, DVM. She studied Marcus with eyes that had seen things, recognized the particular stillness of men who'd learned to hold violence inside their bodies like a second skeleton. Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming. I'm Pat Morrison, director here. Before we proceed, I need to explain something. Marcus said nothing. Waiting was easier than talking. The dog we recovered is approximately 13 years old. Full health assessment shows no signs of extreme aging, which means this cannot be the original animal from your 1991 service record. Then why did you call me? Because the tattoo is authentic. Navy verification confirmed it. And there's something else. She gestured toward the back. Marcus followed through a door marked quarantine, down a hallway lined with empty kennels, fluorescent lights buzzing like trapped flies. The last kennel on the right held a Belgian Malinois. Tan body, black mask and ears, lean muscle under short coat. The dog sat perfectly still, attention locked on Marcus with focus that didn't waver, didn't blink. Not the vacant stare of an abused animal or the manic energy of a puppy. This was operational awareness, the gaze of something trained to assess threats and remember faces. Marcus's knees buckled. He caught himself on the kennel door, knuckles white against chain link. Pat Morrison spoke quietly beside him. We ran full genetic testing. This dog shares DNA with the original Rex from your file. Close enough to be direct descendant, grandson, maybe great-grandson, based on generational markers. How? I was hoping you could tell me. Marcus knelt slowly, bringing himself level with the dog. Up close, he could see the small differences. This Rex's muzzle slightly broader, left ear notched from some old injury. But the eyes were identical to the dog he'd lost 33 years ago. Same intelligence, same judgment. He extended his hand, palm up, through the gap at the bottom of the cage door. The dog stood, approached with measured steps, no fear, no hesitation. Sniffed Marcus's fingers, then sat again, raised right paw, held it in the air. Marcus's breath stopped. The gesture wasn't standard military canine training. It was something Marcus had taught the original Rex, private signal between handler and dog. Paw raised meant ready, meant trust, meant I remember you. He took the offered paw. The dog tapped twice against Marcus's wrist with one patted toe. Pat Morrison made a small sound. I've worked with military dogs for 23 years. I have never seen that behavior. Marcus couldn't speak. The dog held his gaze, still as stone, and in that moment Marcus felt 33 years of carefully constructed isolation crack like lake ice under spring sun. I'm taking him home. Mr. Brennan, there are procedures. I'm taking him home. Something in Marcus's voice made Pat Morrison step back, made her hands come up in a don't shoot gesture civilians probably didn't realize they were making. She pulled keys from her pocket. I'll need you to sign paperwork. Liability waiver. Proof of residence. You'll be legally responsible for, I'll sign whatever you want. 20 minutes later, Marcus walked out with Rex on a standard leash. The dog keeping perfect heel position, without command, moving like they'd done this 1,000 times before. The Blazer's passenger door opened and Rex jumped in without hesitation, sat upright in the seat, stared forward through the windshield. Marcus slid behind the wheel, started the engine, didn't pull out of the lot, just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring at the dog who wasn't his dog, but was, somehow, exactly his dog. Who sent you back? Who knew? Rex turned his head, looked at Marcus, and for a moment the air in the cab felt heavy enough to drown in. Then the dog leaned over, placed his muzzle against Marcus's shoulder, exhaled. The drive home stretched longer than the drive there, every mile pulling Marcus further from the life he'd built out of guilt and silence and into something he couldn't name yet. Rex sat perfectly still beside him, head up, alert, but not anxious. Once, passing through the town of Cascade Falls, population 800, 2 stoplights, 1 diner, Marcus saw Sarah Chen through the window of her restaurant, wiping down tables in the mid-afternoon lull. Sarah, 48, Vietnamese-American, widow of a Marine who died in Fallujah same year Marcus lost Jake. She'd moved to Cascade Falls to escape memories and found Marcus instead, both of them broken in compatible ways. She brought him food once a week, sat on his porch, talked about everything except the things that mattered until silence felt less like drowning. Marcus almost stopped, almost went in, showed her the dog, asked her what the hell was happening because Sarah had a way of making insane things sound reasonable. But Rex shifted in the passenger seat and Marcus kept driving. The cabin appeared through the trees at 4:47 p.m., light already fading toward dusk. Marcus parked, killed the engine, waited for Rex to react, sniffed the perimeter, marked territory, act like a bomb entering unknown space. Instead, Rex jumped down, trotted directly to the northwest corner of the property, stopped, sat, stared at the ground. Marcus followed, pulse climbing. The dog didn't move, didn't look away from a patch of earth that appeared identical to every other patch of earth in 12 acres of Oregon pine forest. What is it? Rex scraped at dirt with one paw, deliberate, purposeful. Marcus went to the workshop, grabbed a shovel, came back. Rex had moved aside, sat 5 feet away watching. Marcus drove the blade into soil. First scoop revealed nothing. Second hit something solid with a metallic clank that echoed wrong in the gathering dark. 10 minutes of digging exposed a military ammunition can, .50 caliber, dated 1991 in faded stencil, waterproof seal still intact. Marcus pried it open with shaking hands. Inside, wrapped in layers of Ziploc bags, a USB drive, a handwritten letter on yellowed paper, and a photograph. Polaroid, colors faded but recognizable. Young man in army fatigues kneeling beside a Belgian Malinois puppy, both of them squinting against desert sun. Marcus recognized his brother immediately. David Brennan, Army Intelligence. Dead, officially suicide, March 18, 2006. He unfolded the letter, held it up to catch the last of the daylight. Marcus, if you're reading this, I kept my promise. I saved him. February 27, 1991. After Highway 80, Rex was ordered destroyed. Compromised asset, they said. He saw too much, knew too much. Dogs don't forget, and they wanted no witnesses. I couldn't let that happen. You loved that dog more than you loved yourself, even then. I faked the paperwork, classified Rex as KIA, smuggled him stateside, bred him. This Rex you found is 4th generation, but I used the original's DNA, his training records, even scent articles from your old gear to condition the bloodline. Each generation trained the same way. Same commands, same purpose. I kept them hidden for 33 years, waiting for the right time. There's a bunker. Camp Adair, Willamette National Forest. Coordinates: 44.6294 degrees north, 123.1953 degrees west. Inside, you'll find evidence of what really happened on Highway 80. Operation Sandcastle, the cover-up, all of it. 247 civilians died that night, Marcus. Women, children, families just trying to escape. Colonel Vincent Mercer gave the order, knew they were non-combatants, ordered the strike anyway. Then buried every witness, every report, every piece of proof. I tried to expose it in 2004. Got too close. Mercer found out. I'm being followed. If I disappear, if they call it suicide, you'll know the truth. I can't finish this, but you can. Trust the dog. He knows the way, knows the scent, knows where I buried everything Mercer killed me to hide. I'm sorry about Jake. I should have stopped him from enlisting. Should have told him war isn't what we pretended it was. Finish this. For the 247, for Jake. For every lie we told ourselves about honor. David, P.S. The collar Rex is wearing. Check inside the leather. Dated March 15th, 2006. 3 days before David's body was found in his apartment. Single gunshot to the head. Service weapon in hand. Note about PTSD and inability to cope. Marcus had believed it. Hadn't questioned. Because believing David chose to die was easier than believing someone had chosen it for him. His hands crumpled the letter, smoothed it out, read it again. Every word felt like a bullet he'd been shot with 33 years ago, but was only now working its way to something vital. He looked at Rex. The dog sat calmly, head tilted slightly, waiting. Marcus crossed to him, knelt, examined the collar. New leather, hand-stitched, quality work. Inside the band, burned into the flesh side of the hide where it wouldn't show. Finish it. D.B. David had sent this dog, had planned this, had waited 18 years past his own death for Marcus to be ready. The weight of it, the patience, the faith, the absolute certainty that Marcus would eventually do the right thing, felt heavier than any rucksack he'd ever carried. He sat down in the dirt beside Rex, back against the pine tree, letter in one hand, collar in the other. The dog leaned against his leg, warm and solid and real. Stars came out, temperature dropped. Marcus didn't move. At 8:32 p.m., headlights swept across the property. Engine sound, diesel, heavy vehicle, moving slow. Marcus's hand went automatically to the M1911 he kept in a workshop lockbox, muscle memory faster than thought. But he was unarmed, unprepared, pinned in the open with nothing but a wound and 33 years of accumulated mistakes. The vehicle stopped at the property line. Headlights died, door opened. Man's silhouette backlit by courtesy light. Tall, 60s, confident stride of someone who'd never questioned his right to go wherever he pleased. Mr. Brennan, my name is Vincent Mercer. I believe you have something that belongs to me. The voice matched perfectly. Same clipped authority Marcus remembered from the radio 33 years ago. Same absolute certainty that orders would be followed because they came from his mouth. Marcus stood slowly, putting himself between Mercer and Rex. The dog growled, low and continuous, sound that vibrated through the ground. I don't know you. Mercer stepped closer into the ambient light spilling from the cabin windows. Gray hair, expensive jacket, face that belonged on corporate boards and charity galas. Smile that didn't reach his eyes. Of course you do. February 26, 1991. You were the spotter. I was Overwatch Command, Highway 80. Marcus's fists clenched. Every instinct screamed attack. End this now. Make him pay for every scream that still echoed in Marcus's nightmares. But Mercer wasn't alone. Two men in suits materialized from the truck, flanking position, hands inside jackets, in the universal language of armed security. Mercer continued, pleasant as discussing weather. I'm retired now. Run a defense contracting firm. Heard through certain channels that a military K9 with interesting DNA markers turned up at state animal control. Started asking questions, followed a trail that led here. Marcus said nothing. Silence was safer than speech. That dog is government property, Mr. Brennan. Technically stolen in 1991. I could have federal marshals here within the hour to reclaim him. Then why haven't you? Because I'm a reasonable man, and I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer. Mercer pulled out a checkbook, actual paper checkbook, Power move of someone who didn't use credit cards or electronic transfers because cash flow meant nothing and physical signatures still mattered. $50,000. That's more than you'll make in 2 years building coffins for people you don't know. All I want in return is the dog. Not for sale. Mercer's smile widened fractionally. Everything has a price, Chief Brennan. Some people just need help finding it. He scribbled a number, tore off the check, held it out. Wind caught the paper, made it flutter like a white flag no one was waving. Marcus didn't move. Rex pressed harder against his leg, growl intensifying. Mercer let the check fall. It spiraled to the ground, landed in pine needles, might as well have been on the moon for all the chance Marcus had of taking it. Mercer's expression shifted, humor draining away like water from a broken glass. When he spoke again, the pleasant facade was gone, replaced by something colder and infinitely more familiar. Command voice, the tone that ordered strikes on civilian convoys and expected no argument. I gave the order to destroy the original Rex. February 27, 1991. After your catastrophic failure on Highway 80 that resulted in, according to official records, acceptable collateral damage during legitimate military operations. The dog was a witness. Witnesses create complications. Clearly, someone didn't follow orders. Marcus took a step forward. Mercer's security detail moved immediately, hands coming out of jackets. But Mercer raised one finger and they froze. Careful, Chief. Assaulting a decorated officer, Bronze Star, Air Medal, 30 years of service, won't end well for you. You'll lose more than a dog. Mercer dropped a business card on top of the check. White, embossed, expensive. Mercer Defense Solutions. Private military contracts. 72 hours, Mr. Brennan. After that, I stop being reasonable. After that, I start looking into who hid that dog for 33 years, who bred him, who trained him, where the evidence they were protecting might be buried. And when I find those answers, everyone involved disappears. Not dramatically, just administratively. People retire, people relocate, people have accidents. Like David Brennan had an accident. The name landed like artillery. Mercer's face betrayed nothing, but his shoulders tightened fractionally, till so small Marcus almost missed it. Your brother was mentally unstable. PTSD, survivor guilt. The investigation was thorough. Was it? Mercer turned toward his vehicle, security detail falling into formation. Over his shoulder, casual as mentioning the weather. 72 hours. Think carefully about what you can afford to lose. The truck reversed, turned, drove away. Taillights disappeared into the trees. Marcus stood perfectly still until the engine sound faded to nothing. Then he picked up the business card, left the check where it fell. Rex nosed his hand, warm breath against cold fingers. Marcus looked down at the dog. Someone had spent 33 years for preparing for this moment. Breeding Boz gathering evidence, waiting for Marcus to be ready to face what he'd run from since 1991. David had believed Marcus would finish it, had died believing it. The question was whether David had been right. Marcus pulled out his phone, ancient flip model, bought in 2008 and never upgraded because smartphones tracked and remembered and shared everything with people Marcus didn't trust. One number programmed, hadn't called it in 3 years. He dialed. 5 rings, 6, 7. Voice answered, rough with sleep and age and damage. This better be God himself calling at 9:30 at night. Hawk, it's Ghost. Silence, then, Marcus? Holy shit, brother. I thought you were. I need help. Another pause, longer. When Tommy Hawk Hawkins spoke again, the sleep was gone from his voice, replaced by something Marcus remembered from Fallujah. From the day Marcus had pulled Hawk's bleeding body out of a building collapse while insurgent fire turned the air to lead. What kind of help? The kind you can't do over the phone. Can you come to Oregon? When? Tomorrow. Tonight if you can. Marcus heard movement. Rustle of fabric. Grunt of pain. Hawk tried to muffle. The leg, the prosthetic below the knee, where an IED had taken everything from femur down. I can be there by noon tomorrow. Still at the old cabin? Yes. Marcus almost hung up. Should have hung up. But his throat closed around something that tasted like broken glass and seawater. Hawk, I don't know if I can do this. Silence stretched. Wind moved through pines, cold and clean and indifferent. Then Hawk, quiet but absolutely certain. You went into Fallujah under fire to pull me out when anyone with sense would have left me. Carried me 200 meters with half your shoulder blown open. You can do anything, Ghost. You just forgot for a while. What if I can't? Then we'll fail together. but we're not failing before we start. See you tomorrow. The line went dead. Marcus closed the phone, slipped it into his pocket. Rex sat patiently beside him, waiting for orders that Marcus didn't know how to give. He looked at the cabin, 12 acres of isolation he'd built to keep the world out, keep the guilt in, keep everything frozen in the moment Jake's notification officers knocked on the door. Then he looked at the business card in his hand. Mercer Defense Solutions, 72 hours. Inside the cabin, Marcus spread David's letter on the kitchen table, set the USB drive beside it, positioned the photograph where lamplight wouldn't wash out the details. Rex lay nearby, head on pause, watching. Marcus opened his laptop, 10 years old, never connected to internet because nothing good came from being connected. He plugged in the USB drive. 3 files, all encrypted. Password prompt appeared, cursor blinking. He tried the obvious. Highway 80, invalid. Sandcastle, invalid. David Brennan, invalid. 10 attempts later, frustrated and exhausted, Marcus almost gave up. Then he looked at Rex, remembered the date stamped on the ammunition can. 022691, February 26, 1991, day of the massacre. The files opened. First document, classified mission brief, Operation Desert Storm, dated February 25, 1991. Target package, suspected Iraqi military convoy evacuating stolen Kuwaiti assets via Highway 80. Authorization, Colonel Vincent R. Mercer, USAF Liaison Command. Rules of engagement, weapons free, destroy all vehicles, except collateral damage as operationally necessary. Second document, post-strike assessment dated March 3, 1991. Unredacted version, not the sanitized report Marcus had seen during debrief. Casualty count, 247 confirmed civilian deaths. Vehicle composition, 87% non-military. Evidence of families, personal belongings, no weapons or military equipment recovered. Recommendation, classify incident top secret, attribute casualties to Iraqi combatants, suppress witness testimony. Signed, Colonel Vincent R. Mercer. Third document, list of names, soldiers who'd been present during Highway 80 strike, 14 names total. Marcus recognized 8, men he'd served with, trained with, trusted. Next to each name, a date. Staff Sergeant Thomas Ridley, May 12, 1993, single vehicle accident. Corporal Michelle Santos, September 8, 1995. Apparent suicide, Lieutenant James Wickham, November 21, 1998. Drowning, Private First Class, David Chen, March 15, 2001. Gas leak explosion. Sergeant First Class, Maria Gonzalez, July 4, 2003. Hiking accident, Captain Richard Kowalski, alive. Retired, private law practice, Chief. Marcus Brennan, alive. Retired, civilian life, Captain David Brennan. March 18, 2006. Apparent suicide. 8 dead, 6 alive. Pattern obvious to anyone who wanted to see it. Marcus's hands shook so badly he had to grip the table edge. Everyone who knew the truth, everyone who could testify, systematically eliminated over 15 years. David had survived until 2006 because he'd been careful, because he was intelligence trained, because he knew how to hide. But eventually Mercer had found him. The question burning in Marcus's chest, why had Mercer left Marcus alive? He clicked on the 4th file hidden inside a subfolder, video file. Grainy, date-stamped February 26, 1991, 23:47 hours. Helmet camera footage, night vision green, view from Marcus's position during the strike. He watched himself, 33 years younger, infinitely more certain, scan the convoy through the rifle scope, watched his own hands key the radio, heard his own voice, tinny through degraded audio. Overwatch, this is Ghost 1. I count multiple non-combatants, women, children visible in windows. Abort, repeat, abort strike. Then Mercer's response, crystal clear. Negative Ghost 1, intel confirms military transport. Target is weapons cache evacuation. Order stand, light them up. Marcus on video, younger self pleading, Overwatch, I am eyes on target. These are families fleeing. Ghost 1, you are not command authority. Fire for effect. That is a direct order. The video showed Marcus lower the radio, showed him close his eyes, showed the first missile streak overhead. Then the camera jerked as Marcus looked away, unable to watch what he'd enabled. The file ended. Marcus sat in silence, so complete he could hear his own heartbeat, could hear Rex breathing, could hear the cabin settling on its foundation like something trying to escape its own weight. Mercer had this video, had kept it for 33 years, perfect insurance against the one witness he couldn't kill, because Marcus's testimony would destroy him, but releasing the video would destroy Marcus first. Mutually assured destruction, Cold War doctrine applied to war crimes. The trap was perfect. If Marcus went public, Mercer released the video showing Marcus following orders to massacre civilians. Marcus would be crucified in media, court-martialed posthumously, stripped of honors, remembered as a war criminal instead of a decorated veteran. If Marcus stayed silent, 247 dead stayed forgotten. Checkmate. Rex lifted his head, ears swiveling toward the window. Low growl, different from before. Not threat, but alert. Marcus killed the laptop screen, moved to the window, stayed back from the glass. Outside, in the darkness between cabin and tree line, small figure moved through the underbrush. Child-sized, slow, deliberate. Marcus grabbed the mag light from beside the door, clicked it on, swept the beam across the yard. Boy, 9, maybe 10 years old. Thin, dark hair, clothes dirty, torn at one knee. He stood frozen in the flashlight beam like a deer, one arm raised to shield his eyes. Marcus opened the door, stepped onto the porch. The boy didn't run. You lost? No response. The boy lowered his arm, squinted against the light. Even from 20 feet away, Marcus could see the bruises. One on his left cheek, another on his forearm, purple-green and days old. It's late for a kid to be out alone. Where are your parents? The boy reached into his pocket, pulled out a small notepad and pencil. Wrote something, held it up. Marcus moved closer, angling the flashlight to read, "Don't talk much. Sorry." "That's okay. Neither do I. What's your name?" More writing, "Dylan." "You hurt, Dylan." The boy hesitated, then wrote, "Fell." Lie. Marcus had seen enough injuries, combat, training accidents, domestic violence reports during shore patrols duty, to know the difference between accident and intention. Those bruises came from hands, not falls. "Where do you live?" Dylan pointed east, toward the main road, toward town. "Long walk from there. You hungry?" Dylan nodded. Marcus stepped back, held the door open. The boy hesitated, glanced at Rex, then walked inside with the careful steps of someone who'd learned to navigate dangerous spaces. Inside, under better light, the damage was worse. Bruises on both arms, split lip, mostly healed, shadows under eyes that had nothing to do with late hours. Marcus pointed to the kitchen table. "Sit, I'll make you something." He pulled bread from the cabinet, peanut butter from the shelf, made a sandwich with hands that wanted to shake, but didn't because the boy was watching and fear was contagious. Set the plate in front of Dylan, poured a glass of milk. Dylan ate like someone who wasn't sure when the next meal was coming. Fast, efficient, no enjoyment, just fuel. Rex approached slowly, sat beside Dylan's chair. The boy looked down, eyes widening, reached out tentatively. Rex leaned into the touch, let Dylan pet his head. First smile Marcus had seen. Small, genuine, gone almost immediately. Dylan wrote, "Nice dog." His name's Rex. More writing. "He's like me. Quiet." "Yeah, he is." Dylan finished the sandwich, drained the milk, wrote again, "Thank you." "You're welcome. Now I need to know, who hurt you?" The boy's face closed down immediately. Walls up. Pen hovering over paper but not writing. "Dylan, I was a medic in the Navy. I've seen injuries. Those bruises aren't from falling." Long pause, then slowly, "Grandfather." "Where are your parents?" "Mom died 2 years ago. Dad died last year. Live with Grandpa now." "What's your grandfather's name?" The boy wrote 2 words that stopped Marcus's heart. Vincent Mercer. Outside, engine sound. Truck, same diesel rumble from earlier. Headlights swept the cabin, brighter this time, aggressive. Dylan's face went pale. He stood so fast the chair fell over. Back toward the corner, shaking. Marcus moved to the window. Mercer's truck, parked blocking the driveway. Mercer stepped out, suit traded for expensive casual wear, but same cold authority in his posture. He walked to the porch, didn't knock, voice carrying through the door. "Dylan, I know you're in there." Marcus opened the door, stepped out, pulled it closed behind him. Dylan stays inside. Mercer's jaw tightened. "That's my grandson. You have no authority. He's got fresh bruises and he's terrified. I'm calling Child Protective Services." Mercer laughed, sharp and humorless. "You think anyone will believe you? Decorated colonel versus broke hermit with PTSD? I'll have you arrested for kidnapping before CPS returns your call. The boy came here on his own. He's hurt. Boys fall. They roughhouse. They don't understand that discipline sometimes looks harsh to outsiders. That's not discipline. That's abuse. Mercer stepped closer, voice dropping. Let me be very clear, Mr. Brennan. You have 72 hours to return my dog. Now you have exactly 60 seconds to return my grandson. Or I call the sheriff and have you dragged out of here in handcuffs. Marcus looked through the window. Dylan stood inside, face pressed to the glass, silent tears streaming. Every instinct screamed to fight, to end this now, to make Mercer pay for Highway 80 and David and every bruise on that boy's skin. But fighting meant losing Dylan to foster care while Marcus sat in jail, meant abandoning the evidence, meant Mercer winning by default. So Marcus did the hardest thing he'd ever done, stepped aside. Dylan, you need to go home. Through the glass, Dylan's face crumpled. He shook his head violently. I know, but right now you have to. I promise this isn't over. Mercer opened the cabin door. Dylan, car, now. The boy walked out, shoulders hunched, didn't look at Mercer, got into the truck without being told twice. Mercer lingered on the porch. 72 hours, Mr. Brennan. After that, I stopped being civil, and I've been very civil tonight. He walked to the truck, paused with his hand on the door. One more thing. Your brother David? He tried to be a hero too. Spent years gathering evidence, building cases, planning exposure. Very thorough, very careful. Didn't help him in the end. The truck reversed, turned, drove away. Through the rear window, Marcus could see Dylan's face, pale oval in the darkness, watching until the forest swallowed everything. Marcus stood on the porch long after the taillights disappeared. Rex pushed through the door, pressed against his leg. 72 hours, clock started now. Inside, Marcus pulled out the flip phone, dialed the one number programmed. Hawk answered immediately. I'm already on the road. What happened? Everything. Mercer showed up, threatened me, took his grandson, kids being abused, Hawk, 9 years old, covered in bruises. Jesus, and I let him go. Let Mercer take him because fighting meant losing everything. You did the right thing. Doesn't feel right. Right things usually don't. What else? I opened David's files. Highway 80 evidence. List of witnesses. 8 dead, 6 alive. Patterns obvious. Silence on the line. Then, David was one of the 8. Yeah, and you're one of the 6. Marcus looked at the list still glowing on his laptop screen. Yeah. Hawk's voice changed, became something harder. Then we finish this fast. Before Mercer decides your liability number 9. I'll be there by 7 a.m. Pack anything you can't lose. We're going to that bunker. What if the evidence isn't enough? Then we make it enough. David died buying time for this. We don't waste it. The line went dead. Marcus began gathering supplies. Backpack, water, flashlights, bolt cutters for locks, crowbar for sealed doors. Everything methodical, practiced, muscle memory from training he thought he'd left behind. Rex watched from the doorway, alert but calm. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus heard something, soft scraping against the cabin's north wall. He grabbed the maglite, M1911, from the lockbox, moved silently to the back door, eased it open, swept the light across the yard. Nothing. Trees, darkness, wind moving through branches. Then the light caught paper, white against dark wood. Note taped to the wall. Marcus pulled it down, unfolded it. Child's handwriting, pencil pressed hard enough to tear the paper in places. He knows I told you. He's sending me away tomorrow. Somewhere I can't talk to anyone. Please help. I don't want to disappear like he said Mom disappeared. Dylan. Marcus read it 3 times. Each word felt like watching Highway 80 burn all over again. Seeing the danger, knowing what would happen, unable to stop it. 72 hours. But Dylan didn't have 72 hours. Dylan had until tomorrow. Rex appeared beside him, whined softly. Marcus looked at the dog, at the note, at the darkness where a 9-year-old boy had risked everything to ask for help. He called Hawk back. Change of plans. We're not waiting until morning. Hawk's truck arrived at 2:47 a.m., headlights cutting through fog thick enough to drown in. Marcus heard the diesel engine before he saw the vehicle. F250, older model, maintained with the same stubborn precision Hawk applied to everything he hadn't let the war take from him. The door opened and Tommy Hawkins stepped down, prosthetic leg hitting gravel with a sound like bones breaking. 65 years old, gray beard cut military short, shoulders still broad despite the weight he'd lost after Fallujah. He wore jeans, flannel shirt, tactical vest that had seen better wars. Limped toward Marcus with the gait of someone who'd learned to distribute pain across different parts of his body so no single piece screamed loud enough to stop him. They didn't embrace, didn't shake hands, just stood in the headlights and let 30 years of shared ghosts fill the space between them. "You look like hell, Ghost. You look worse." Hawk's mouth twitched, closest thing to a smile Marcus had seen from him since the IED. "Yeah, well, I got an excuse." Rex approached from the cabin, silent as smoke. Hawk's eyes tracked the dog, widened fractionally. "Jesus Christ, that's not possible." Fourth generation. David bred them, kept the bloodline alive. Hawk knelt slowly, prosthetic making the motion awkward. Held out his hand. Rex sniffed, sat, raised his paw. Same greeting. David really did it. Marcus handed Hawk the letter. The USB contents printed on paper because screens could be hacked, deleted, made to disappear. Hawk read standing in the truck's headlights, lips moving silently over words that had been written 18 years ago by a man they'd both failed to save. When Hawk finished, he folded the papers, slipped them inside his vest. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. 8 witnesses dead. Your brother knew Mercer would come for him. He knew. He planned for it. He bet everything on me being ready when Rex came back. Are you? Marcus thought about Dylan's note, about bruises on a 9-year-old's arms, about 247 bodies burning on a highway while he watched through a scope and did nothing. I don't know, but that kid doesn't have time for me to figure it out. Then we move. Now, what's the play? Marcus spread a topographic map across the truck's hood. Willamette National Forest, Camp Adair, marked in red. Coordinates from David's letter matched a section of forest 12 miles northeast, accessible only by logging roads that hadn't been maintained since the 80s. We go to the bunker, get the evidence David said he buried, but first we get the kid. Marcus looked up. Hawk's expression was stone, the same face he'd worn in Fallujah when Marcus found him pinned under rubble, leg crushed, fire spreading, and Hawk had said with perfect calm, "Leave me or we both die." Mercer's sending Dylan away today, maybe already gone. We need to know where. Hawk pulled out a tablet, newer than anything Marcus owned, military-grade encryption visible in the boot screen. "Let me make some calls. I still know people who owe me favors." He stepped away, phone to his ear, voice too low to carry. Marcus stood in the cold, watching fog drift through the vines like searching hands, and felt time compress into something sharp enough to cut. Rex pressed against his leg, warm, solid. Reminder that some things survived when everything else burned. 15 minutes later, Hawk returned, face grim. "Mercer's got a private airstrip outside Salem. Hangar registered to his defense company. Flight plan filed for 0800 hours. Destination Billings, Montana. Pilot listed as V. Mercer. Passenger manifest shows 1 minor, no name." Billings. Why Billings? Hawk tapped at the tablet screen, pulled up satellite imagery. There's a facility 40 miles outside Billings. Privately owned. Officially a boarding school for troubled youth. Unofficially, a black site, near enough. No oversight, no inspections. Kids go in, paperwork gets fuzzy. Some come out, some don't. Marcus's hands clenched. How long to Salem? Hour and change if we push it. But Ghost, we can't just walk into a private airfield and take a kid. That's felony kidnapping. Federal charges. So we let Mercer disappear him instead. Silence stretched. Hawk's prosthetic scraped gravel as he shifted weight. "I'm just saying there is no clean way out of this. We go after Dylan, we're committed. No turning back." I stopped having clean options 33 years ago. Hawk nodded slowly. "Then we need leverage, something that makes Mercer think twice before calling cops." Marcus pulled the business card from his pocket. Mercer Defense Solutions. What if he thinks we already went public? What if he believes the evidence is already out there? Bluff? Controlled leak. Enough to scare him, not enough to burn everything. Hawk considered this, then pulled up a contact list on his tablet. "I know a guy, investigative reporter, Portland Tribune. Used to cover military scandals. He'd run with this if we gave him a taste." How much of a taste? 1 document. The witness list. 8 dead, pattern obvious to anyone paying attention. We say there's more coming unless Mercer backs off. Marcus thought about David's letter, about 18 years of patient planning, about a trap that needed Mercer desperate enough to make mistakes, but not desperate enough to burn everything and run. Do it, but anonymous, can't trace back to us. Already planned on it. Hawk's fingers moved across the screen, attaching files, composing message. This hits his inbox in 5 minutes. Should be online by 0600. Then we move for Dylan. We've got 5 hours before that plane takes off. 4 hours, 53 minutes, Hawk corrected, because precision mattered when margins were this thin. They loaded into Hawk's truck, Marcus driving because Hawk's prosthetic made highway speeds dangerous. Rex in the backseat, Hawk navigating with a tablet. The forest fell away behind them, replaced by farmland and sleeping towns and the long, empty stretches where Oregon forgot to be picturesque. Marcus pushed the speedometer to 75, engine protesting but holding. Hawk sat silent, checking the tablet every few minutes, tracking whether the message had been read, whether the reporter had taken the bait. At 4:23 a.m., Hawk's screen lit up. He's in, reading it now. Response? Typing, long message, he's hooked. 5 minutes later, articles going live at 600. Headline, 8 military veterans dead. Pattern suggests systematic elimination of Gulf War witnesses. Subhead mentions unnamed sources, ongoing investigation, more details to follow. Marcus's grip tightened on the wheel. That'll get Mercer's attention. That'll get everyone's attention. FBI, DOD, media. We just rang the biggest bell we could find. Good. Let him know we're not backing down. The Salem airfield appeared at 5:47 a.m., private facility wedged between industrial parks and farmland. Single runway, 3 hangars, chain link fence with gate code access. Security camera at the entrance, another covering the tarmac. They parked half a mile away, walked in using a drainage culvert that passed under the fence line. Rex moved ahead, scouting, military training evident in every calculated step. The hangar Mercer's company owned sat at the far end, larger than the others, newer construction, LED security lights burning harsh against pre-dawn dark. Through windows high on the east wall, Marcus could see movement inside. Hawk pulled binoculars, glassed the building. Cessna Citation, twin-engine jet, probably seats 8, fueled and ready, no crew visible yet, but give it 30 minutes. Where's Dylan? Hawk shifted focus. Office attached to the hangar. Lights on. 2 figures, adult and child. Marcus felt his pulse climb. We go in quiet, extract the kid. Gone before anyone knows we were here. And if Mercer doesn't cooperate, then it stops being quiet. They approach from the north, using parked equipment for cover. Fuel truck, ground service vehicles, cargo containers. Rex stayed between them, utterly silent. 4 years of combat deployment showing in the way he moved through shadows like he was made of them. The hangar's side door was locked but not alarmed, overconfidence of people who'd never expected anyone to challenge them. Hawk produced a tension wrench and pick, had the lock open in 40 seconds. Inside smelled like aviation fuel and expensive leather. The Cessna sat center hangar, polished to mirror shine, corporate logo on the tail, MDS in aggressive font. Stairs extended from the cabin door, interior lights glowing warm. The office door stood partially open, voices carrying. Mercer's voice, calm and inflectionless. You'll like Montana, fresh air, mountains, good people who understand discipline. Dylan's voice, small, I don't want to go. It's not a discussion. You embarrassed me last night. Running to strangers, making accusations. This school will teach you proper behavior. Grandpa, please. We leave in 40 minutes. Go use the bathroom. Make yourself presentable. Footsteps. Dylan emerged from the office, face pale, eyes red. He wore clean clothes, but they hung wrong, like he dressed in someone else's body. Saw Marcus and Hawk in the shadows and froze. Marcus stepped forward, finger to his lips. Dylan's eyes went wide, but he didn't make a sound. Mercer's voice from the office. Dylan, did you hear me? The boy looked at the office, at Marcus. Back to the office, decision playing across his face, trust the strangers or obey the monster. He took 3 steps toward Marcus. Mercer appeared in the office doorway, saw everything in one glance. His expression didn't change, but his hand moved inside his jacket. Don't! Marcus's voice cut across the hangar, absolute authority of someone who'd given life or death orders in rooms where hesitation meant casualties. Dylan, come here. The boy ran, got behind Marcus, small hands gripping Marcus's jacket. Mercer's hand came out of his jacket holding a pistol, not pointed, just visible. SIG P226 professional's weapon. Mr. Brennan, you're trespassing on private property. That's the second crime you've committed tonight. First was leaving that fabricated witness list with a reporter. Not fabricated, all verifiable. 8 dead soldiers who happened to know what really happened on Highway 80. Coincidence seems unlikely. Conspiracy theories from a PTSD case. Mercer shifted the pistol, still not aiming, but the threat implicit. Put my grandson down and walk away. This is your last chance at walking anywhere. Hawk moved left, creating angles, making Mercer choose targets. His hand rested on his own sidearm. Beretta M9, kept from his service days. 2 against 1, Colonel. And you're the one who brought a war criminal's weapon to a custody dispute. Mercer's smile was cold desert wind. I'm licensed to carry. You're kidnapping a minor. When police arrive, which of us goes to jail? Marcus felt Dylan shaking against his back. Felt the weight of every choice that had led here. Highway 80, David's death, Jake's coffin, 33 years of running from the moment he pulled that trigger. Police aren't coming. Your article drops in 10 minutes. By 0630, every news outlet in the country will be asking why 8 Gulf War veterans died under suspicious circumstances. By 700, FBI will have questions about Operation Sandcastle. By 800, when you're supposed to be wheels up for Montana, you'll be too busy managing the scandal to worry about one grandson. Mercer's jaw tightened. That article proves nothing, speculation and coincidence. Hawk pulled out his tablet, turned it so Mercer could see the screen. David Brennan's encrypted files, fully decrypted, mission briefs, post-strike assessments, audio recordings, photographs of civilian casualties you ordered buried. All time-stamped, all authenticated. All ready to go to the New York Times, Washington Post, and DOD Inspector General if anything happens to Dylan or us. You're bluffing. Try me. Standoff stretched, measured in heartbeats, in shallow breathing. Outside, dawn was coming, sky turning from black to gray. Somewhere in the distance, traffic was starting, people beginning days that didn't include choices like this. Mercer lowered the pistol, put it back inside his jacket. When he spoke, his voice carried the same tone as the radio transmission 33 years ago. Command, certainty, absolute belief in his own authority. You think you've won. You've just guaranteed that every piece of evidence you release will be discredited. I have lawyers. I have connections. I have 30 years of decorated service and medals and commendations. You have conspiracy theories and a dog. We have the truth. Truth is what people believe. And people believe men like me over men like you. He walked toward them, slowly, hands visible. No weapon. Stopped 5 feet away. Dylan, come here. The boy's grip tightened on Marcus's jacket. Marcus kept his voice level. He's not going with you. Then you're kidnapping him. I'll call the sheriff. You'll be arrested within the hour. Call them. Marcus pulled out his own phone, the flip model, ancient but functional. We'll wait here, all of us. When they arrive, we'll show them Dylan's bruises. Let them decide who should have custody. Mercer's eyes flickered to Dylan, to the boy's exposed forearms, where purple-yellow contusions painted their own testimony. Those are from roughhousing. Boys get hurt. 9-year-old boys don't bruise their own kidneys. Marcus had seen the way Dylan moved, careful and protective of his left side. That's organ trauma. That's abuse severe enough to require medical intervention. You have no proof. We'll get a doctor. Today. Right now. Let a professional document the injuries and explain how they happened. Mercer's composure cracked, just fractionally. A muscle jumped in his jaw. His hands formed fists. Relaxed. Formed again. If you take him, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, parental interference. You're not his parent. You're his guardian. And guardians lose that status when they abuse the children they're supposed to protect. Hawk moved closer, tablet still extended. We've already contacted Child Protective Services. Anonymous tip about bruising and suspected abuse. They'll be at your house by 900. If Dylan's not there, they'll issue a warrant. If he is there and injured, they'll remove him anyway. Either way, you've lost custody. Mercer stared at them, calculations running behind his eyes. Assessing options, weighing outcomes, searching for the angle that let him win. He found none. This isn't over. His voice dropped to something dangerous. Something that had ordered strikes on civilians and elimination of witnesses. You've made enemies you can't imagine. People who will end you so thoroughly no one will remember you existed. Marcus stepped forward, closing distance, voice quiet enough that only Mercer could hear. I died 33 years ago on Highway 80. Everything since then has been borrowed time. You can't threaten a ghost. Mercer held his gaze for 3 seconds, then turned, walked to the office, grabbed a briefcase, headed for the exit. At the door, he paused. The Montana school would have been mercy. What's coming for you, for all of you, won't be. He left. Door closed. Engine started outside, vehicle driving away. Dylan's grip finally loosened. The boy stepped around Marcus, looked up with eyes too old for 9 years. Is he gone? For now. Will he come back? Marcus knelt to Dylan's level. Yeah, probably, but we're not running, not anymore. What happens to me? Hawk crouched beside Marcus. We take you somewhere safe, get you checked by a doctor, make sure you are okay. Then we figure out long term. Will I have to go back with him? Not if we can help it. Marcus met the boy's eyes, saw fear and hope, tangled so tight they might be the same thing. But I need you to be honest with me. Everything that happened with your grandfather, we need you to tell someone official. Doctor, social worker, police. Can you do that? Dylan nodded slowly. Good. Marcus stood, offered his hand. Dylan took it. Outside, the sun was rising, turning fog golden. They walked to Hawk's truck, Rex following, Dylan between them like something worth protecting. The drive back took them through Salem, past coffee shops opening for early customers, past schools where other kids would arrive in a few hours with lunch boxes and homework, instead of bruises and trauma. Dylan sat in the back seat with Rex, one hand buried in the dog's fur, staring out the window at a world that looked the same but felt different. Marcus called Sarah Chen from the road. Her voice was sleep rough and worried. Marcus, it's not even 7. What's wrong? Everything. Nothing. I need your help. He explained, abbreviated version. Enough truth to convey urgency without drowning her in details. Sarah listened without interrupting, and when Marcus finished, she was silent for 5 seconds that felt like drowning. Bring him here. I'll call Maria Santos from CPS. She's good people. Won't judge, won't rush. We'll get him examined, get statements documented, start the legal process. You sure? This could get complicated. Marcus, I lost my husband to a war that never should have happened. If I can help one kid survive the war happening in his own house, that's the least complicated thing I've done all year. They reached Cascade Falls at 8:17 a.m. Sarah's Diner, Chen's family restaurant, sign hand-painted by her daughter before leukemia took her in 2016, stood on Main Street, lights on, coffee brewing. Sarah met them at the door wearing an apron, an expression that managed to be both gentle and absolutely immovable. She looked at Dylan, at his bruises, at the way he held himself like breakage was inevitable. Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed steady. Hi, sweetie. I'm Sarah. You hungry? Dylan nodded. Come on. I make the best pancakes in 3 counties. We'll get you fed while we wait for some people who want to help. Inside, Sarah seated Dylan at a corner booth, brought orange juice and a stack of pancakes that could feed 3 people. Dylan ate mechanically, fuel without pleasure, while Sarah sat across from him, asking gentle questions about favorite colors and whether he liked dogs and nothing at all about what brought him here. Marcus and Hawk sat at the counter, coffee going cold, watching. You think CPS will move fast enough? Hawk's voice was low, meant for Marcus alone. Depends what the doctor finds. If injuries are severe, they'll do emergency removal. If not, we're gambling that Mercer won't lawyer up and get Dylan back before the case is built. Then we build it fast. The doctor arrived at 8:45. Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, 43, pediatric specialist from Salem who Sarah had called in a favor to bring. She examined Dylan in the diner's back office, door closed, taking time that felt like geological ages. When she emerged, her face was professionally neutral, but her hands shook slightly as she filled out paperwork. Multiple contusions, various stages of healing. Pattern consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. Possible hairline fracture in left radius, needs X-ray from room. Bruising on torso suggests strikes to body core, deliberately placed to avoid easy visibility. Her pen pressed hard enough to tear the form. This is systematic abuse over extended period, months minimum. Maria Santos from CPS arrived 20 minutes later. Latina woman in her 50s, built solid, eyes that had seen every flavor of human damage, and still believed in fighting it. She interviewed Dylan for 37 minutes, recording everything, taking notes in shorthand that looked like prayers. When she finished, she pulled Marcus and Hawk aside. Emergency custody order is granted. Dylan is now ward of the state pending investigation. Normally he'd go to foster care, but given the high-profile nature of the guardian and potential danger, she paused, choosing words carefully. I'm authorized to place him in protective custody with a suitable temporary guardian if one is available. Marcus felt the question before she asked it. Mr. Brennan, you have military background, stable housing, no criminal record. Would you be willing to serve as emergency foster placement? I don't have experience with kids. Your son, Jake, you raised him. And look how that turned out. Maria's expression softened but didn't yield. Jake enlisted at 18, served with honor, died protecting his squad. That's not failure. That's a young man making his own choices. He chose the military because of me, because I made war look like glory instead of what it is. And now you have a chance to show another boy what it really is. Truth, survival, living with damage and still getting up every morning. Marcus looked at Dylan, sitting in the booth with Rex's head on his lap, both of them perfectly still. What if I fail him? What if you don't? The question hung there, unanswerable. 40 minutes later, paperwork signed, emergency order filed. Marcus drove back to the cabin with Dylan in the passenger seat and a responsibility he'd never asked for settling across his shoulders like a rucksack full of someone else's mistakes. Dylan didn't speak until they pulled into the driveway. Then, quiet as breathing, "Thank you." "For what?" "Not leaving me." Marcus killed the engine, sat in silence, hands on the wheel. "I left a lot of people. Some by choice, some because I had to, some because I was too scared to stay." Maybe his throat closed around words that tasted like gunpowder. Maybe it's time I stopped leaving. They went inside. Marcus showed Dylan the spare room, bare mattress, empty dresser, window facing east where morning light would wake him gently. Nothing like a home, but better than a hangar or a boarding school in Montana or wherever Mercer would have sent him next. "You can sleep. You're safe here." Dylan sat on the mattress, testing weight, fingers tracing the seam where fabric met wood frame. "What happens now?" "Now we wait. CPS investigates. Court decides custody. Could take weeks, could take months." "Will Grandpa try to take me back?" "He'll try." "Will you let him?" Marcus met the boy's eyes, deep brown, old with pain, young with desperate hope. "No." "Promise?" The word felt like swallowing shrapnel. "I promise." Dylan lay down, curled on his side. Rex jumped up beside him without being asked, settled against the boy's chest. Within 5 minutes, both were asleep, breathing synchronized. Marcus stood in the doorway watching them, feeling time collapse backward to every moment he'd failed to save someone. David, Jake, 247 civilians on a highway he could still see when he closed his eyes. Hawk appeared beside him, silent as smoke. "You did good today, Ghost. We took a kid from a bad situation and put him in one that's only marginally better. That's not good. That's triage. Triage saves lives." Hawk's hand settled on Marcus's shoulder, brief pressure, then withdrew. "Now we finish what David started. We get the evidence from that bunker. We make sure Mercer can't disappear Dylan or anyone else." Marcus checked his watch, 10:23 a.m. How long until the article goes viral? Already has. Hawk showed his tablet. The Portland Tribune piece had been picked up by wire services, shared across social media, spawned a dozen follow-up articles speculating about cover-ups and conspiracies. 500,000 views and climbing. Comment section was a war zone of veterans sharing their own stories of witness intimidation. Mercer's phone is probably on fire. Good, let him burn. They spent the next hour preparing. Marcus loaded his pack with climbing rope, headlamp, medical kit, energy bars, water. Hawk checked weapons. Both carried pistols. Hawk added a tactical shotgun because bunkers meant close quarters, and you didn't take chances with your life in confined spaces. Rex watched them prepare, alert but calm, like he'd been waiting for this. At 11:47 a.m., Sarah called. "Marcus, you need to see this. Turn on the news." He did. Found the local Portland station. Saw Mercer's face filling the screen. Professional photo, dress uniform, medals displayed. Chiron underneath read, "Decorated Colonel Denise Conspiracy Claims." Mercer stood at a podium, expensive suit, flag behind him. Every inch the war hero wrongfully accused. "These allegations are categorically false. I served this country with honor for 30 years. The deaths referenced in today's article are tragic but unconnected. Natural causes, accidents, personal struggles. To suggest otherwise is conspiracy theorizing at its worst." Reporters voice off camera. "What about Operation Sandcastle? What about Highway 80? Highway 80 was a legitimate military target, enemy combatants. The operation was reviewed and cleared by multiple levels of command. These baseless accusations dishonor the men and women who served. What about your grandson? Reports say he's been removed from your custody." Mercer's expression flickered. First genuine emotion Marcus had seen from him. My grandson is troubled, acting out. I sought professional help for him, and certain individuals have weaponized his behavioral issues to support their false narrative. I'm working with authorities to ensure his safe return. The screen cut back to the studio. Marcus turned it off. He's spinning it, making himself the victim. Hawk nodded. Expected, but he's also scared. You don't go on TV unless you're worried about narrative control. What's our next move? We get the evidence from Campadere, physical proof, not just documents, something undeniable. They left at noon, Marcus leaving a note for Dylan in case he woke. Went to finish something. Back tonight. Stay with Sarah if you need anything. Rex is with us. You're safe. The drive to Willamette National Forest took 90 minutes through back roads that hadn't been maintained since logging companies abandoned the area in the 90s. Pavement gave way to gravel, gravel to dirt, dirt to something that was barely a suggestion of human passage through wilderness. Campadere had been a World War II training facility. 40,000 acres of forest converted into mock battlefields where soldiers learned to kill before shipping overseas. Decommissioned in 1946, most buildings demolished or left to rot. What remained was concrete bunkers, rifle ranges overgrown with blackberry, and foundation scars where barracks once stood. The coordinates from David's letter led them to the northwest corner, area marked on old maps as munitions storage, restricted. Chain link fence sagged with age. Warning signs faded to illegibility. Rex jumped out before Marcus cut the engine, nose working, tracking scent trails invisible to human senses. He knows where to go. David trained him. Trained all of them. Hawk shouldered his pack, checked the shotgun. If Mercer connected the dots, he might have people here already. Then we moved fast. They followed Rex through gaps in the fence, into forest that felt older than it should, trees twisted into shapes that had nothing to do with nature, and everything to do with decades of ammunition buried too shallow, leaching chemicals into groundwater. Rex moved with purpose, not wandering, heading straight northeast through terrain that should have required navigation. Stopped at a concrete structure half buried in hillside. Bunker entrance, steel door rusted but intact, combination lock still functional. Marcus tried David's birthday, didn't work. Tried his own, tried Jake's. Hawk pointed to the collar Rex wore. Check the coordinates, last 4 digits. Marcus tried 1953. The lock clicked to open. Inside was darkness, absolute, and air that tasted like earth and rust and time. Headlamps cut tunnels through black, revealed concrete walls streaked with moisture, floor littered with debris from 70 years of decay. The bunker stretched back 40 feet, split into chambers. First room, empty except for metal shelving, collapsed into modern art. Second room, graffiti from teenagers who'd found this place decades ago, left their marks, and departed. Third room had a locked door, military grade, newer than the bunker itself, installed deliberately to protect something worth protecting. Hawk tried the combination from outside, didn't work. Tried variations, nothing. Rex sat in front of the door, stared at Marcus, waiting. What do you know that we don't? The dog's collar. Marcus examined it again, found text burned into the leather he'd missed before, hidden under the buckle, 0226911-600, date and time. February 26, 1991, 1600 hours, 4 p.m., day of the massacre. The lock opened. Inside, preserved in climate-controlled environment someone had maintained for years, sat filing cabinets, plastic storage containers, and one wall covered in photographs pinned to corkboard like a murder investigation. Marcus stepped closer, headlamp illuminating faces. Highway 80, aerial shots showing the convoy. Ground-level images of aftermath. Bodies, burned vehicles, personal effects scattered across asphalt. Children's toys, women's shoes, suitcases burst open, contents spilling like wounds. Hawk's voice came hollow. Jesus Christ. Bottom right corner showed victims' faces. Individual portraits, before and after. Families who'd been fleeing Kuwait, hoping to reach safety, caught instead in fire that fell from clear sky. 247 of them, each one photographed, each one named in Arabic script beneath their image. David had documented them all. The filing cabinets held military records, classified assessments, damage reports, internal memos discussing how to minimize political fallout from civilian casualties. Each document bore Mercer's signature or initials. One folder labeled Witness Management contained surveillance photos of the 14 soldiers who'd been present during Highway 80. Each photo had a date in red ink, the date that soldier died. 8 folders marked with X's, 6 still open, including Marcus's own face staring back from a photo taken outside his cabin, dated 3 months ago. Mercer had been watching him, waiting, planning. Hawk pulled files, photographed everything with his tablet, uploading to encrypted cloud storage as backup. This is enough. This ends him. Marcus opened the last filing cabinet, found something else. Audio cassette tapes labeled by date. February 25th to 27th, 1991. Radio communications. He pulled the tape marked February 26, 23:47 hours. Time of the strike. Hawk produced a portable cassette player from his pack. Old school, the kind you could still buy at pawn shops, maintained because sometimes the past only spoke through obsolete technology. The tape hissed, crackled, then voices emerged. Marcus's own voice, younger and terrified. Overwatch, this is Ghost 1. I count multiple non-combatants. Women, children visible in windows. Abort, repeat, abort strike. Then Mercer, negative, Ghost 1. Intel confirms military transport. Target is weapons cache, evacuation. Orders stand, light them up. Marcus again. Overwatch, I am eyes on target. These are families fleeing. Mercer, harder. Ghost 1, you are not command authority. Fire for effect. That is a direct order. Static, breathing, then missile launch, explosion, screaming. Different voice breaking in. Command frequency. Overwatch, this is actual. Confirmed target package. We're showing thermal signatures inconsistent with military transport. Mercer, actual target confirmed, proceeding as planned. Actual. Overwatch, I'm ordering immediate ceasefire. Disengage, repeat, disengage. The tape ended, cut off mid-sentence like someone had stopped the recording deliberately. Hawk stared at the player. He overrode his own commander. Kept firing even after being ordered to stop. Marcus's hands shook. He was willing to kill his own people to cover it up. More than willing. Hawk opened another file, this one marked Post-Strike Cleanup. Internal memo dated March 1st, 1991. From Mercer to unnamed superior. Recommend immediate reassignment of ground observer personnel to minimize operational security risks. Attached list of personnel requiring administrative separation. Attached was a list of 14 soldiers, the same ones who'd been systematically eliminated over the next 15 years. Mercer had marked them for death before they even left Iraq. They spent 40 minutes documenting everything, taking photos, copying files to 3 separate drives for redundancy. When they finished, the evidence was undeniable. War crimes, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice. Enough to bury Mercer. We need to move this somewhere safe. Hawk secured the drives in waterproof case. Mercer knows we're digging. He'll come for this. As if summoned by prophecy, Rex's ears pricked. Low growl, attention fixed on the entrance. Company. They killed the headlamps, moved to the sides of the room, weapons ready. Footsteps approached from outside. Multiple people, trying for stealth, but boots on concrete didn't lie. A voice echoed down the corridor, amplified by bunker acoustics. Mr. Brennan, Mr. Hawkins, I know you're in there. This is Deputy Sheriff Clayton, Benton County. We have a warrant for your arrest. Kidnapping, child endangerment, trespassing on federal land. Hawk's voice, barely audible. Mercer works fast. Marcus called back. We're unarmed, coming out. We're not unarmed, Hawk hissed. We don't shoot cops. Marcus set his pistol on the floor. Hawk hesitated, then did the same. They emerged with hands visible, Rex between them. 3 sheriff's deputies waited at the entrance, weapons drawn but not aimed, expressions suggesting they'd rather be anywhere else. Deputy Clayton, 50-ish, mustache, 20 pounds overweight but carrying it with authority, stepped forward. Marcus Brennan? Thomas Hawkins? That's us. You're under arrest. Turn around, hands behind your back. On what charge specifically? Clayton read from a paper with the tone of someone who knew the words were bullshit but had to say them anyway. Kidnapping of a minor, Dylan Mercer. Child endangerment. Trespassing on federal property. Interfering with lawful custody. Dylan was removed by CPS emergency order. We didn't kidnap him. Vincent Mercer filed a complaint alleging you coerced the child, made false accusations, and removed him from legal guardian care without authorization. We have documentation, medical reports, CPS placement order. You can present that to a judge. Right now you're coming with us. They cuffed Marcus first, then Hawk. Metal tight enough to restrict circulation, standard procedure that felt like judgment. Rex started to follow, but Clayton blocked him. Dog stays here. We'll call animal control. He's a veteran. Marcus's voice came sharp. Military working dog. You impound him and there'll be hell to pay. Clayton hesitated, looked at Rex, saw something in the dog's bearing that spoke of service and sacrifice. Fine, but he's your responsibility. They were separated into two patrol cars for the drive back. Marcus in one, Hawk in the other. Rex loaded into a third vehicle with a deputy who looked nervous transporting an animal that sat perfectly still and watched him like a threat assessment. The Benton County Jail was 60 miles southeast, town too small to have its own facility, sharing space with two other counties. They processed Marcus and Hawk separately. Fingerprints, photos, property inventory, medical check. Put them in holding cells on opposite sides of the building. Marcus sat on the concrete bench, stared at walls painted institutional green, and felt time compress into something sharp. 33 years ago, he'd sat in debriefing rooms answering questions about Highway 80, telling sanitized version of truth that made everyone complicit feel better about what they'd done. Now he sat in a cage while the man who'd ordered those deaths walked free, spun narratives, controlled the story. Hours passed. No lawyer appeared, no phone call offered, just silence and fluorescent lights and the knowledge that somewhere outside these walls, evidence sat in a bunker waiting to be destroyed or hidden or discredited. At 6:47 p.m., the cell door opened. Not a deputy, a man in expensive suit, polished shoes, briefcase that cost more than Marcus's truck. Mr. Brennan, I'm Robert Chen, attorney. I've been retained on your behalf. By who? Sarah Chen, my sister. She called in a family favor. The lawyer sat on the bench, opened his briefcase, pulled out files. Here's where we stand. Mercer has filed charges. He's also filed emergency motion to regain custody of Dylan, claiming you coerced the child through threat of violence. That's a lie. Doesn't matter if it's true. Matters if he can make it believable. And Vincent Mercer is very, very good at being believable. What about the evidence? What about Highway 80? Chen's expressions suggested he'd heard this before, knew how it ended. Mr. Brennan, I've reviewed the files your friend uploaded before arrest. They're compelling. They're also classified. Using them means admitting you accessed restricted military documents. That's federal crime, possible espionage charges. So we're trapped. Use the evidence, go to prison for stealing it. Don't use it, go to prison for kidnapping. Not trapped, just in a very narrow passage. Chen pulled out more papers. CPS is fighting the custody motion. Medical evidence supports abuse allegations. But judge assigned to the case, Clarence Morrison, has history of siding with military veterans in family disputes. Mercer's decorated service record will carry weight. Marcus felt the walls closing in. What do we do? We go to arraignment tomorrow. Plead not guilty. Hope bail is set low enough that Sarah can cover it. Then we prepare for the ugliest custody battle you've ever seen. The lawyer left. Marcus sat in silence until lights dimmed for night cycle, until the jail settled into the particular quiet of people trying to sleep in places designed to prevent rest. Somewhere in the building, Hawk was going through the same calculations, same trapped feeling. Somewhere outside, Dylan was either safe with Sarah or already being processed back into Mercer's custody. Somewhere out there, Rex waited, and evidence sat unguarded, and time ran out faster than truth could catch up. Marcus closed his eyes, saw Highway 80 burning, saw David's letter, saw Jake's coffin, saw Dylan's bruises, saw 33 years of running from the moment he'd chosen to pull a trigger instead of refusing an illegal order. Maybe this was justice. Maybe this was what happened when you spent 3 decades avoiding consequences. Or maybe, voice in his head that sounded like Hawk, like David, like every person who'd believed Marcus was capable of more than he'd let himself become. Maybe this was the beginning of finally paying the debt. At 11:23 p.m., footsteps approached his cell. Not a guard, someone moving with purpose and authority that didn't ask permission. The cell door unlocked, opened. Woman stood there, 40-something, dark suit, FBI credentials on lanyard around her neck. Marcus Brennan? I'm Special Agent Jennifer Reeves, FBI. You need to come with me. Am I under arrest? Different kind of arrest. The kind where we're trying to keep you alive long enough to testify. Agent Reeves drove a black Suburban with tinted windows and the kind of engine that didn't belong in civilian vehicles. Marcus sat him back, still cuffed, watching streetlights blur past while his mind processed the shift from county jail to federal custody in under 60 seconds. Hawk was already in the vehicle, slumped in the opposite seat, prosthetic leg extended at an angle that suggested pain he wouldn't acknowledge. His eyes met Marcus's, question clear. Do we trust this? No choice either way. Reeves glanced at them in the rearview mirror, eyes sharp behind wireframe glasses. I'm taking you to a safe location. Both of you will be released from local custody, charges dropped in exchange for cooperation with federal investigation into Vincent Mercer in Operation Sandcastle. How did you, Marcus started. Your friend uploaded files to cloud storage from the bunker. Our algorithms flagged the keywords, war crimes, civilian casualties, cover-up. We've been building a case against Mercer's defense contracting firm for 18 months. Money laundering, bid rigging, bribery. But war crimes from 1991? That's new. That's big enough to put him away permanently. What about Dylan? Reeves's expression tightened. Child Protective Services has emergency custody. Judge Morrison denied Mercer's motion to regain guardianship pending full investigation. The boy is safe with Sarah Chen under temporary foster placement. Marcus felt something unclench in his chest, tension he'd been holding since the airfield finally releasing enough to breathe. But Reeves merged onto the highway, accelerating to speeds that made conversation feel fragile. Mercer knows we're coming for him. He's liquidating assets, calling in favors, preparing to disappear. We have maybe 48 hours before he's ghost protocol and untouchable. Then we move fast. We move smart. Reeves took an exit that led away from Salem toward Federal Building in Eugene. I need your testimony. Everything you saw on Highway 80, everything in those files, everything David Brennan documented. David's dead because he tried to testify. David was alone. You're not. FBI protection, federal prosecutors, media attention. Mercer can't make you disappear without exposing himself. He's done it 8 times before. Those were isolated, deniable. This is different. This is public, documented, impossible to spin as coincidence. Hawk shifted, prosthetic scraping against seat. What's our play? Grand jury convenes in 72 hours. We present evidence, get indictment, arrest Mercer before he can run. But we need Marcus on the stand, first-hand witness to the strike, to the orders, to the cover-up. Marcus stared out the window at Oregon darkness rolling past. 33 years. He'd spent 33 years trying to bury Highway 80, trying to forget the screams, trying to convince himself that following orders absolved responsibility. Now someone was asking him to dig it all up, speak it into record, own every terrible second. I'll testify. Reeves nodded. Good, because without you, Mercer walks. The safe house was 40 miles outside Eugene, rural property owned by a front company, protected by security that looked civilian but moved with military precision. 2 agents at the gate, 3 more inside, perimeter sensors that would detect anything larger than a raccoon. They brought Rex from the sheriff's impound, delivered him with apologies, and visible relief at transferring responsibility for an animal that made grown men nervous. The dog walked straight to Marcus, sat, raised his paw. Marcus took it, felt the double tap against his wrist, and for the first time in hours allowed himself to believe this might actually work. Hawk was given medical attention, prosthetic adjusted, pain medication offered and refused, compression wrap for swelling that had turned his stump purple. He sat at the safe house kitchen table, tablet open, reviewing the files they'd uploaded from the bunker. It's all here. Everything David collected, every document, every photo, every piece of evidence Mercer thought he'd buried. Marcus poured coffee, black, hot enough to burn, except the audio tape, the one showing Mercer overriding his commander's ceasefire order. We got that. Hawk pulled up an audio file, recorded it before the deputies arrived. Full conversation, Mercer refusing direct orders to disengage. Play it. The tape hissed to life, voices emerging from 1991 like ghosts demanding acknowledgement. Marcus's younger self, Overwatch, this is Ghost 1. I count multiple non-combatants. Women, children visible in windows. Abort. Repeat, abort strike. Mercer's response, cold and certain. Negative Ghost 1. Intel confirms military transport. Target is weapons cache evacuation. Orders stand. Light them up. Then the new part, the section Marcus had never heard because he'd been on the ground dealing with Rex trying to bolt toward the burning convoy. Command frequency breaking in. Overwatch. This is actual. Confirmed target package. We're showing thermal signatures inconsistent with military transport. Mercer, Actual, target confirmed. Proceeding as planned. Actual, Overwatch, I'm ordering immediate ceasefire. Disengage, repeat, disengage. Static, silence. Then explosion sounds, screaming, radio chatter cutting in and out as people died while Mercer ignored orders from his own superior. Marcus's hands clenched around the coffee mug, hard enough that ceramic creaked. He kept firing, even after being ordered to stop. More than that, Hawk fast-forwarded. Listen to what comes next. Mercer's voice, 10 minutes later, different frequency. All units, Highway 80, engagement complete. Target destroyed. Prepare after action reports emphasizing military nature of convoy and compliance with ROE. Any inconsistencies will be addressed through appropriate channels. Translation, lie in your reports or face consequences. Hawk nodded. David had the full tape. 53 minutes of radio traffic showing Mercer ordering the strike, overriding ceasefire, then orchestrating the cover-up in real time. How did David get this? He was Army intelligence assigned to review classified communications for security purposes, found the tape in archives, recognized what it was, made a copy before it could be purged. And that's what got him killed. Yeah. They sat in silence, drinking coffee that had gone cold, while outside the safe house, perimeter guards changed shifts with the quiet efficiency of people who'd done this too many times before. At 3:47 a.m., Marcus's phone rang. The flip model, ancient and untrackable. Sarah's number. Dylan, okay? Sarah's voice came tight with controlled panic. Marcus, he's gone. What? I put him to bed at 9. Checked on him at 10, 11, midnight. At 2, I went to check again, and he wasn't there. Window open, screen removed. He left a note. Marcus's pulse spiked. What does it say? I'm reading it now. I heard Sarah on the phone. Mercer's lawyers are coming tomorrow to take me back. I won't go to Montana. I'm going somewhere he can't find me. Thank you for trying. Tell Marcus I'm sorry. Jesus Christ. Marcus was already moving, grabbing his jacket. How long ago? Had to be between midnight and 2. That's 2 hours minimum, maybe 4. He's 9 years old in the Oregon wilderness at night. Marcus looked at Hawk, who was already standing, gathering gear. We need search and rescue. Sarah's voice cracked. I already called sheriff. They said they can't mobilize SNR until morning unless there's evidence of immediate danger. There is evidence. Kid with trauma history, running scared, middle of the night in forest that kills experienced hikers. Sheriff said they'll send a deputy to take a report. That's all they can do right now. Marcus hung up, turned to Agent Reeves, who'd appeared from the hallway, weapon drawn, responding to raised voices. Dylan ran. 2 to 4 hours ago. We need to find him before Mercer does. Reeves holstered her weapon. I can authorize 2 agents for search assistance, but I can't pull protection from this location. Mercer knows where you are by now. He'll come. Then he comes. Marcus grabbed the pack he'd brought from the bunker, started loading supplies. Kid takes priority. Hawk was already at the door, prosthetic strapped tight, shotgun slung. Where would he go? He doesn't know the area. He knows the cabin. Marcus felt certainty settle into his gut like stones. He'll try to get there. Only place he felt safe. That's 12 miles through national forest. In the dark, terrified, 9 years old. Hawk's face showed the same calculation Marcus was running. Odds of survival dropping with every hour Dylan spent alone in wilderness that didn't care about trauma or good intentions. Rex was at the door, alert, waiting. Can he track? Reeves asked. He's 4th-generation military working dog bred and trained to find buried evidence by scent. Marcus knelt, let Rex smell Dylan's note that Sarah had photographed and texted. Yeah, he can track. They took Reeves's Suburban, Marcus driving because he knew these roads, Hawk navigating with topographic maps on his tablet, Reeves coordinating with the 2 agents she'd authorized to assist, Martinez and Cole, both former military, both looking at Rex with recognition of what a good K9 could do. They started at Sarah's house, let Rex smell Dylan's room, bed, clothes, the jacket he'd been wearing. The dog's nose worked, processing scent molecules invisible to human senses, building olfactory map of where Dylan had been and where he might go. Rex hit on the window Dylan had exited, tracked across Sarah's backyard into the tree line. Stopped at the fence separating residential area from national forest, looked back at Marcus, waiting for orders. Find him, boy. Find Dylan. Rex launched forward, nose low, moving with purpose through underbrush that would have slowed humans to crawling pace. Marcus followed, headlamp cutting tunnel through darkness, Hawk behind him, Reeves and her agents spreading out to cover more ground. The forest was dense here, second-growth timber from the 80s, branches low enough to catch clothing and skin. Marcus found fabric snagged on a blackberry bramble, scrap from Dylan's jacket. 30 minutes in, right direction, moving fast for a 9-year-old in the dark. Rex kept tracking, never hesitating, following scent trail that wove through deadfall and creek beds and patches of terrain where mud held perfect impressions of small feet moving in irregular patterns, sometimes running, sometimes walking, sometimes stopping as if Dylan had paused to listen for pursuit. 2 hours into the search, Rex stopped at the base of a Douglas fir, circled twice, whined. "What is it?" Hawk played his flashlight up the trunk, caught movement 30 feet up. Oh, Christ. Dylan clung to a branch, arms wrapped around bark, face pale in the flashlight beam. He'd climbed to escape something. Animal, fear, the darkness itself, and now couldn't get down. "Dylan!" Marcus kept his voice calm, controlled. "It's me. Marcus, you're safe." The boy's face crumpled. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I just couldn't." "I know, just hold on, we're coming up." Hawk was already pulling rope from his pack. "I'll belay, you climb." Marcus hadn't climbed since Jake was 10, and they'd spent weekends at Smith Rock, teaching the boy to trust rope and friction and the strength in his own hands. Muscle memory returned as he tied into the harness, started ascending using branches as holds, Hawk feeding rope below. 20 feet up, a branch cracked under Marcus's weight, sent him swinging, rope catching with jolt that compressed vertebrae and reminded him he was 61, not 30. He recovered, kept climbing, reached Dylan at 28 feet. The boy was shaking, hypothermia setting in despite the jacket, adrenaline crash making him weak. "Hey!" Marcus positioned himself on the branch beside Dylan. "You did good. Climbed higher than most adults could. I heard Sarah. On the phone. Mercer's taking me back." "No, he's not. His lawyers. We'll lose. We have evidence. We have testimony. We have the truth." Dylan's eyes, dark, exhausted, older than 9, searched Marcus's face for lies and found none. "Promise?" The word caught in Marcus's throat, sharp-edged with every promise he'd broken, every person he'd failed to save. But Dylan needed more than truth. Dylan needed hope. "I promise." Marcus rigged a harness around Dylan using webbing from his pack, clipped the boy into the rope, started the descent with Hawk managing belay below. 30 seconds from the ground, voices carried through the trees, not Reeves's team, wrong direction, moving fast. Flashlights, multiple, searching. Marcus's hand went to his sidearm, signaled to Hawk, who'd already positioned himself behind a tree, shotgun ready. The lights converged on their position. 6 men, tactical gear, no badges visible. Private security, probably Mercer's people. Lead man called out, "Mr. Brennan, we're here for the boy. Hand him over and we'll let you walk." Like hell. Marcus positioned himself between Dylan and the security team, Rex snarling at his side. "This doesn't have to get messy. Our employer just wants his grandson back. You're already facing kidnapping charges. Don't add assault to the list." Reeves stepped from the shadows, FBI credentials visible. Weapon trained on the lead contractor. "Federal agents, lower your weapons." The contractors didn't lower weapons, didn't raise them either. Standoff frozen in flashlight beams and mounting tension. Lead contractor's radio squawked. Voice on the other end, Mercer's voice, tinny but recognizable. "Status? We have visual on target. FBI presence, multiple armed subjects. Recommend abort." "Negative. Retrieve the boy. Use whatever force necessary." "Sir, that's federal agents. We engage, this becomes a felony. I'll handle the legal consequences. Get my grandson." The lead contractor's expression showed a man doing math. Paycheck versus prison time, loyalty versus survival. He lowered his weapon fractionally. "We're leaving. Tell your employer to handle this through courts like everyone else." Mercer's voice over the radio, fury barely controlled. "You're fired. All of you. I'll ruin your company, your careers." The contractor turned off his radio. "Let's go. Not worth dying over." They withdrew, flashlights disappearing into forest, leaving Marcus and Reeves and Dylan standing in darkness that felt suddenly vast. Reeves lowered her weapon. "We need to move. Mercer knows Dylan's out here. He'll send more people. Then we get the kid somewhere he can't reach." "Where?" "Mercer has resources, connections, lawyers who can file injunctions faster than we can hide him." Marcus looked down at Dylan, still clipped to the rope, face showing exhaustion and fear and desperate hope, that someone would finally keep a promise. We finish this. Tonight. We get the evidence to the grand jury now instead of waiting 3 days. We get indictment, get arrest warrant, end Mercer before he can hurt anyone else. Reeves pulled out her phone. I can't convene a grand jury at 4 in the morning. No, but you can get a federal judge to issue emergency arrest warrant based on probable cause. We have the evidence. We have witness testimony. We have recordings of Mercer ordering war crimes and murdering witnesses. That requires presenting evidence to a magistrate judge, showing immediate danger to public safety. 247 civilians died twice because Mercer refused a direct order to cease fire. 8 military veterans died because they knew the truth. Dylan almost disappeared tonight to a facility where kids go missing. Hawk's voice cut through objections like combat orders. That's immediate danger. Reeves was already dialing. You better be right about this evidence. We're right. Marcus freed Dylan from the rope, lifted the boy onto his shoulders. Let's go. They hiked back to the vehicle's double time, pushing through exhaustion and darkness, Rex leading the way. Dylan rode Marcus's shoulders, small hands gripping tight, 9-year-old trust heavy as mortar shells. At the vehicles, Reeves's phone conversation intensified. Judge, I understand the hour, but we have recordings of a decorated colonel ordering strikes on civilians, overriding ceasefire commands, and orchestrating elimination of witnesses. Yes, Judge. I can have the evidence to you within the hour. She lowered the phone. Federal Magistrate Judge Catherine Morrison. Related to the judge who denied Mercer's custody motion? Marcus asked. Brother and sister. And she is pissed that her brother was played. She's willing to review evidence immediately. If it's sufficient, she'll issue arrest warrant. Where? Her house. 30 minutes from here. Then we move. The drive took 23 minutes. Marcus pushing speed limits while Reeves organized evidence on her tablet. Documents, photos, audio files, everything uploaded from the bunker and cross-referenced with federal databases to establish authenticity. Judge Morrison's house sat on 5 acres outside Eugene, craftsman-style home with lights burning despite the hour. She met them at the door wearing a bathrobe, an expression that suggested she'd seen every flavor of late-night emergency, and this better be worth waking her. 68 years old, white hair cut short, eyes sharp as scalpels. Agent Reeves, you have 1 hour to convince me this warrant is justified. After that, I'm going back to bed and you're explaining to your superiors why you woke a federal judge at 4 a.m. Inside, they spread evidence across her dining room table. Documents forming timeline of crime and cover-up spanning 33 years. Judge Morrison read it in silence, face betraying nothing. When she reached the audio transcripts, she paused. I need to hear this, the actual recordings. Well, Hawk queued up the file. The voices filled the room, Marcus calling abort, Mercer ordering strike, actual commanding ceasefire, Mercer ignoring orders while civilians burned. Judge Morrison listened to all 53 minutes, twice. When the recording ended, she removed her reading glasses, set them on the table with care. This is evidence of war crimes, murder, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. Why am I only hearing about this now, 33 years later? Marcus met her eyes. Because everyone who tried to expose it died. My brother David tried in 2006, made it look like suicide. 7 others before him. I'm the last one left alive who was actually there. And the dog? She gestured to Rex, sitting calmly beside Dylan. 4th-generation descendant of my original canine, bred and trained to find buried evidence. My brother spent 18 years preparing for this moment. Judge Morrison studied Rex, then Dylan, then Marcus. Her expression softened fractionally. Mr. Brennan, you understand that testifying about this will destroy your own reputation? This recording shows you following orders to fire on civilians. Marcus nodded. I know. I've spent 33 years trying to bury it, trying to pretend that following orders absolved me. But those 247 people are still dead. And if exposing my own guilt is what it takes to expose Mercer's, then that's what I'll do. The judge was silent for a long moment, then turned to Reeves. You're requesting arrest warrant for Vincent Mercer on charges of war crimes, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. We have 14 counts of suspected homicide related to witnesses from Highway 80. We can prove at least 3 definitively, including Army Captain David Brennan. Judge Morrison pulled legal pad from drawer, began writing with fountain pen that scratched across paper like judgment being carved into stone. I'm issuing a warrant for arrest of Vincent Mercer on probable cause for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and accessory to war crimes. I'm also issuing protective custody order for Dylan Mercer, removing him from all contact with his grandfather pending trial. She signed with flourish, stamped the document with seal that made it official. Agent Reeves, execute this warrant immediately, before Mr. Mercer has time to run. We're on it. Reeves was already coordinating with FBI field office, assembling arrest team. Judge Morrison looked at Marcus. You'll need to testify. Grand jury trial, probably multiple depositions. Your life is going to become very public, very scrutinized. I understand. Good. Because once this starts, there's no stopping it. Mercer will deploy every legal weapon he has. He'll discredit you, attack your service record, make you look like the war criminal instead of him. Let him try. Marcus's voice came steady, certain. I've been carrying this for 33 years. Time someone else shared the weight. Dylan tugged on Marcus's sleeve. What happens to me? Judge Morrison's expression softened completely. You stay with Mr. Brennan under federal protective custody until this is resolved. You're safe now. The arrest happened at 6:47 a.m. FBI hostage rescue team hit Mercer's house with precision that left no room for resistance. 12 agents, ballistic shields, flashbangs that turned morning into thunder. Marcus watched from Reeves's Suburban parked 3 blocks away, listening to radio traffic as the operation unfolded. Breach, hallway clear, living room clear, kitchen. Target located, bedroom, hands visible, no weapon. Vincent Mercer, you're under arrest. Federal warrant, do not resist. The video feed from HRT body cameras showed Mercer sitting on his bed, fully dressed despite the hour, hands folded in his lap like he'd been waiting. No surprise on his face, no fear, just calculation. They cuffed him, read rights he probably knew better than the agents reciting them, walked him out to unmarked vehicle while neighbors emerged from houses to watch a decorated war hero being arrested by federal agents. Marcus felt nothing, not satisfaction, not vindication, just exhaustion and relief that maybe finally this was ending. Reeves turned from the front seat. He's in custody. Arraignment is set for 2 p.m. today. Federal prosecutor wants you there. To testify? To watch. You'll testify at grand jury, but prosecutor wants Mercer to see you. Wants him to know you're not backing down. The federal courthouse in Portland was fortress architecture, concrete and steel, security checkpoints that treated everyone like potential threats. Marcus went through metal detectors, bag search, pat down, then waited in witness room with Hawk and Dylan while lawyers prepared. At 1:47 p.m. a prosecutor arrived, Assistant U.S. Attorney Michelle Park, 42, reputation for winning cases everyone else considered unwinnable. Mr. Brennan, I'll be direct. We have strong evidence, but Mercer will fight every inch. His lawyers are already filing motions to suppress the audio recordings, claiming they're classified and therefore inadmissible. Can they do that? They can try. We'll argue that evidence of ongoing crimes isn't protected by classification, but it'll be a battle. What do you need from me? Everything you saw on Highway 80, everything you know about the cover-up, everything David told you before he died. David died in 2006. I didn't know about any of this until 4 days ago. Then everything you've learned since. And be prepared. Mercer's defense will paint you as unreliable witness with PTSD, questionable memory, potential grudge against your superior officer. All of that's probably true except the grudge. Marcus met her eyes. But it doesn't change what happened. Doesn't change that 247 people died while I watched and did nothing. Park's expression showed respect. That honesty will serve you well on the stand. Juries trust witnesses who admit their own failures. The courtroom was modern, wood paneling and fluorescent lights, an American flag hanging limp beside the judge's bench. Mercer sat at defense table flanked by 3 attorneys in suits that cost more than Marcus's annual income. He looked calm, confident, like this was minor inconvenience rather than reckoning 33 years delayed. His eyes found Marcus in the gallery, held for 3 seconds. No hatred in that gaze, just assessment, same look he'd given targets before ordering their destruction. All rise. Judge Patricia Chen, Sarah's cousin, appointed to federal bench 2 years prior, entered and everyone stood. The arraignment took 17 minutes. U.S. Charges read, plea entered, not guilty naturally, bail hearing scheduled for following day. Mercer's lawyers argued for release on own recognizance, citing decorated military service and community ties. Park argued he was flight risk with resources to disappear internationally. Judge Chen denied bail. Given the severity of charges and evidence of potential witness intimidation, defendant will be held without bail pending trial. Mercer's expression didn't change, but his hands clenched, first crack in the facade. As marshals let him out, he looked back at Marcus one final time, mouthed two words: "This isn't over." Marcus nodded. "No, it isn't." The media circus exploded that evening. Every major outlet running the story: decorated colonel arrested for war crimes, cover-up spanning 3 decades, evidence of systematic witness elimination. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all covering from different angles. But the facts remain consistent across networks. Marcus watched from the safe house, Dylan asleep on the couch with Rex, Hawk reviewing trial preparation documents. The news anchor's voice carried across the room. Colonel Vincent Mercer, retired Air Force officer and CEO of defense contractor Mercer Defense Solutions, was arrested this morning on federal charges related to the 1991 Gulf War incident known as the Highway of Death. Sources indicate evidence includes audio recordings and classified documents allegedly showing Mercer ordered strikes on civilian targets despite direct orders to cease fire. The screen cut to Mercer's attorney at press conference. These charges are politically motivated attacks on a decorated veteran who served his country with distinction for 30 years. The so-called evidence is manipulated, taken out of context, and we will prove in court that Colonel Mercer acted appropriately within his authority and rules of engagement. Then Sarah's face appeared on screen, standing outside her diner, looking uncomfortable with camera attention. "I've known Marcus Brennan for 7 years. He's a good man who's been carrying terrible burden. If he says this happened, I believe him." The anchor continued, "The case has drawn attention from veterans groups, with some supporting Mercer and others calling for full investigation. The Pentagon has announced internal review of Operation Desert Storm records related to civilian casualties." Marcus turned off the TV. "You okay?" Hawk asked. "No, but I will be. Trial won't start for months. Maybe a year. You ready for that?" Marcus looked at Dylan, sleeping peacefully for the first time since they'd met, Rex's warm bulk providing security no walls could offer. "Yeah, I'm ready." The grand jury convened 6 days later. 23 citizens, ordinary people, asked to decide if evidence justified trial. Marcus testified for 4 hours, walking them through Highway 80 minute by minute, answering questions about orders and procedures in the moment he'd chosen to pull a trigger that enabled 247 deaths. The audio recordings played in full, Mercer's voice filling the grand jury room. Photographs displayed on screen, before and after, families and fire, evidence too graphic to ignore. When Marcus finished, the grand jury foreman asked one question: "Mr. Brennan, why should we believe you now when you stayed silent for 33 years? Marcus met the foreman's eyes. "Because silence killed my brother, got 8 other veterans murdered, and nearly cost a 9-year-old boy his life. I was silent because I was a coward. I'm speaking now because I finally found something worth being brave for." The grand jury deliberated for 47 minutes, returned with indictment on all charges: war crimes, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. Mercer's trial was set for 8 months later, but the real victory came 3 weeks after indictment. Marcus was at the cabin teaching Dylan woodworking, measuring twice, cutting once, sanding until the grain showed smooth. Rex lay nearby, older now but still alert, still watching. Sarah pulled up in her car, got out holding newspaper. "You need to see this." The headline read, "Pentagon declassifies Highway 80 records, 247 civilian deaths confirmed." The article detailed internal investigation revealing systematic cover-up, falsified reports, and evidence that multiple commanders had known about civilian casualties but chose to bury the truth. Mercer's name appeared 37 times. At the bottom, a sidebar: "Victims' families demand justice." Photos showed Iraqi families, survivors of Highway 80, children who'd lost parents, parents who'd lost children. They'd hired lawyers, filed suit, demanded accountability. Marcus set down the paper, hands shaking. Sarah sat beside him. "You did this. You gave them voice. I just stopped being silent. That's all it takes sometimes." Dylan looked up from the piece of wood he'd been sanding. "Marcus? What does this mean?" It means the truth came out. People who were hurt finally get to be heard. Will the bad people be punished? Marcus thought about Mercer in federal detention, awaiting trial that would dissect every decision, every order, every death. Thought about justice delayed 33 years, but arriving nonetheless. Yeah, I think they will. The boy returned to Sanding, satisfied with an answer that didn't promise perfection, but offered hope. That evening, Marcus drove to Willamette National Cemetery, walked through rows of white headstones until he found the one he needed. David Brennan, Army Captain, 1969 to 2006. Marcus knelt, placed a hand on the cold marble. We did it. Got Mercer, got justice, got the truth out. Wind moved through the cemetery, carrying scent of fresh-cut grass and distant rain. I'm sorry it took so long. Sorry I didn't believe you when you were alive. Sorry I let fear keep me silent. He pulled the medal from his pocket, Navy Cross his own, earned for actions he'd spent 33 years questioning. Placed it on David's grave. You deserve this more than I ever did. You were brave when I was a coward. Rex appeared beside him, silent as smoke, and together they sat in the cemetery until darkness came and stars emerged, distant witnesses to a counting long overdue. The trial began 8 months later. Federal District Court, Portland. Media filled the gallery, cameras capturing every moment for networks worldwide. Iraqi families sat in reserve section, some traveling thousands of miles to see justice attempted. Marcus testified on day 3, walking the jury through Highway 80 with precision that left no room for doubt or interpretation. Defense attorneys tried to break him, questioned his memory, his motives, his mental stability. On cross-examination, lead defense attorney pressed hard. Mr. Brennan, you've been treated for PTSD, correct? Yes. You've had episodes of memory loss, confusion, paranoia. I've had nightmares about things that actually happened. That's not paranoia. That's consequence. But can we trust your memories from 33 years ago? Marcus pulled out the dog-eared photograph he'd carried since 1991. Highway 80 burning, bodies visible in the foreground. I don't need memory when there's evidence. This happened. Those people died, and I've spent every day since trying to forget it. The photograph was entered into evidence. Jury passed it around, faces changing as reality of 247 deaths became concrete. Day 7 brought the audio recordings, played in full for jury and gallery. Mercer's voice ordering strikes, refusing ceasefire, orchestrating cover-up. When the tape ended, silence filled the courtroom like pressure before explosion. Day 12, prosecution rested. Defense called Mercer to testify, first time he'd spoken publicly since arrest. He wore dress uniform, medals displayed, every inch the decorated officer. His testimony was smooth, practiced, designed to cast himself as soldier following orders in fog of war. Decisions were made in real time with imperfect information. I believed, based on intelligence provided, that the target was legitimate military convoy. When ground observer reported possible civilians, I made judgment call based on overall mission parameters. You ignored direct order from your commander to cease fire. I questioned the order based on my assessment that commander was receiving flawed intelligence. In combat situations, officers must make calls that balance competing priorities, including priority of civilian lives. All lives matter, but in war, sometimes impossible choices must be made. I made the choice I believed would save more lives in the long run by degrading enemy capability. Even if that meant 247 innocent people died, Mercer's mask slipped, just fractionally. War is hell, Mr. Brennan's own words. He pulled the trigger. He enabled the strikes. Now he's trying to absolve his guilt by blaming me. Marcus sat in the gallery, listening to his own choices weaponized against him, and felt not anger but clarity. Mercer was right. Marcus had pulled the trigger, had enabled deaths, had carried guilt for 33 years. But guilt didn't erase truth. And truth was that Mercer had given illegal orders, covered up war crimes, and murdered witnesses to protect himself. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Marcus waited in the cabin, teaching Dylan chess, walking the perimeter with Rex, living in suspended animation between verdict and consequence. Day 4, 3:47 p.m., the call came. Jury has reached a verdict. Judge wants everyone in court in 1 hour. The courtroom packed beyond capacity. Overflow crowd watching on monitors in adjacent rooms. Marcus sat beside Hawk, Dylan between them, Rex at their feet. Rex, Judge Chen entered. All rise. Has the jury reached verdict? The foreman stood, woman in her 50s, librarian from Salem, We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find? Guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice? Guilty. On the charge of war crimes? Guilty. 16 more charges, 16 more guilties, each one landing like hammer blow, each one representing life taken, truth buried, justice delayed. When the foreman finished, Mercer sat perfectly still, face betraying nothing. But his hands shook. First time Marcus had seen fear crack through the armor. Judge Chen thanked the jury, set sentencing for 6 weeks later, remanded Mercer to custody pending sentence. As marshals let him out, Mercer looked at Marcus one final time. No words, just acknowledgement that the war between them had finally ended, and only one had survived. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Marcus pushed through without comment, protecting Dylan from cameras and questions. But Sarah Chen, standing at the periphery, caught a reporter's attention. How do you feel about the verdict? Sarah looked directly at the camera. Justice took 33 years. Better late than never. Sentencing came on a Tuesday in March. Unseasonably warm for Oregon spring. Marcus drove to Portland with Dylan and Rex, arrived early to avoid crowds. The courtroom filled with Iraqi families. Some of the 247, the ones who'd survived and spent 3 decades wondering why their loved ones had died and no one had answered for it. Judge Chen reviewed the case, the evidence, the systematic nature of Mercer's crimes spanning 33 years. Colonel Mercer, you had distinguished career, decorated service, and chose to use that position to commit grave crimes and cover them up through murder and intimidation. Your actions dishonor everyone who serves with integrity. She sentenced him to life in prison without possibility of parole on the murder charges, consecutive sentences on obstruction and war crimes. Mercer would die in federal custody. As marshals led him away, one of the Iraqi women stood, elderly, wearing black, face carved with grief that had aged her beyond years. She spoke in Arabic, translator rendering her words. My daughter died on that highway. She was 8 years old. For 33 years, I wondered if anyone cared. Today, I know someone finally did. She looked at Marcus. Thank you for your courage. Marcus couldn't speak, throat closed around words too large for sound. He nodded, and the woman nodded back, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not absolution, but acknowledgement that truth mattered even when it came too late. Outside, spring sun warm on his face. Marcus stood with Dylan and Rex and Hawk and Sarah, and for the first time in 33 years, felt the weight he'd been carrying shift enough to breathe. You okay? Hawk asked. Getting there. What now? Marcus looked at Dylan. Now we go home. The cabin had changed in the 8 months since that first night Rex appeared. Dylan's room was furnished now. Bed, desk, shelves full of books about woodworking and mows and survival. The workshop expanded with space for 2, tools organized so a 9-year-old could learn to create instead of break. Rex was slower, arthritis settling into joints that had worked too hard for too long, but still alert, still watching. Marcus taught Dylan everything he knew. How to measure precisely, cut cleanly, sand until grains showed true. How to walk the perimeter checking for threats that didn't come. How to live with damage and keep moving forward. 1 year after the verdict, Marcus received letter postmarked Iraq. Inside, a photograph, memorial built in Kuwait, black marble wall inscribed with 247 names in Arabic and English. Highway 80 Victims Memorial. The letter in careful English. Thank you for speaking truth when silence was easier. Our families can finally grieve properly knowing the world acknowledges their deaths mattered. Marcus pinned the photo to the workshop wall, beside the image of Jake in uniform and David kneeling with the original Rex. 3 generations of damage, 3 versions of trying to make things right. Dylan saw him looking at the photos. You miss them? Every day. Does it get easier? Marcus thought about 33 years, about guilt and silence, and the slow work of learning to live with choices that couldn't be unmade. No, but you learn to carry it better. And sometimes he looked at Dylan, at this boy who'd survived his own war and was learning to build instead of break. Sometimes you get a chance to do better the next time. That evening, they sat on the porch watching sunset paint the Cascades in colors that had no names. Rex lay between them, breathing steady and slow. Dylan broke the silence. Marcus, can I ask something? Anything. Why did you wait so long? To tell the truth? Marcus was quiet, searching for words that would honor the question without crushing the questioner. Because I was afraid. Afraid of being judged, afraid of losing what little I had left, afraid that speaking up would hurt more than staying silent. What changed? You, Rex, coming back, realizing that some things are worth being brave for. Like what? Like making sure kids don't disappear. Like giving families answers. Like proving that truth matters even when it's hard. Dylan absorbed this, nodding slowly. I want to be brave like that. You already are. You ran from Mercer, you trusted strangers, you testified. That's courage. Will I have to keep being brave? Marcus put his arm around the boy's shoulders. Yeah, probably. Life keeps asking for it. But, and this is the important part, you don't have to be brave alone. The sun dropped below the mountains, leaving them in darkness, broken only by porch light and stars. Rex's breathing slowed, deepened, became the rhythm of something settling into rest earned through service and sacrifice. Marcus thought about Highway 80, about David's letter, about Jake's coffin and Dylan's bruises, and 247 families finally getting acknowledgement. Thought about the long road from pulling a trigger to speaking truth, from silence to testimony, from running to standing still. The journey wasn't over. Dylan would have therapy, court check-ins, years of processing trauma. Mercer's appeals would drag through courts. Iraqi families would fight for compensation. The military would investigate how cover-ups had persisted for 3 decades. But tonight, on this porch, with this boy and the weight of truth finally shared instead of shouldered alone, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in 33 years. Not peace. Peace was for people who'd earned it, and Marcus knew he never would. But maybe purpose, maybe redemption's distant cousin. Maybe the beginning of learning that carrying darkness didn't mean becoming it. Dylan's head drooped against Marcus's shoulder, sleep claiming him the way it claimed children who finally felt safe. Marcus didn't move, didn't wake him, just sat in the cooling night and let time pass without fighting it. Rex's eyes opened, met Marcus's gaze in the darkness. The dog's tail thumped once against the porch, acknowledgement that passed between them without words. We made it. Against every odd, every fear, every reason to quit, we made it. The stars turned overhead, indifferent and eternal, witnessing one more human attempting to balance the scales in a universe that kept no accounts. Somewhere in federal prison, Mercer sat in a cell wondering how it had all gone wrong. Somewhere in Iraq, families visited a memorial bearing their loved ones' names. Somewhere in Walter Reed Cemetery, David's grave held a medal he'd earned more than the brother who'd left it there. And here on a porch in Oregon, a man who'd spent 33 years running from truth finally stopped, looked at the life he'd somehow stumbled into saving, and chose to stay. Morning would bring new challenges, custody hearings, therapy sessions, the slow work of healing damage too deep for quick fixes. But tonight, Marcus Brennan sat with a sleeping boy and a tired dog, and the first real family he'd had since Jake died, and decided that maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The wind moved through the pines, carrying no answers but asking no questions either. Just witness to the quiet miracle of broken things learning to hold together. Just space for a ghost to finally rest.